I'm very troubled about her record, whether it was when she was in private practice, the Sentencing Commission, or on the bench. She would have let 1,500 prisoners go during COVID. Among the ones that she let go were a murderer, a bank robber. These are hardened criminals back on the streets. She also has been soft on child pornography. She doesn't seem to have a judicial philosophy. She will not be clear about where she is on court packing. And I have talked to a lot of women who were quite concerned about her record when it comes to how she's dealt with crime, how she's been soft on criminals, soft on child pornographers and child abusers.
Well, that was Senator Marsha Blackburn with me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures, outlining concerns that she has for Supreme Court nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. In just a few hours, Senate confirmation hearings will begin for Jackson, who will give an opening statement today before facing questions from lawmakers today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, rather. Joining me right now is constitutional attorney, member of the Supreme Court Bar, Mark Smith. Mark, great to have you. Thanks very much. What do you expect this week out of these hearings?
Well, I think the Democrats, of course, are going to talk about her credentials, but I think the Republicans are going to focus, Maria, on the fact that Judge Brown Jackson is really a sort of radical left-wing progressive judge with no known judicial philosophy beyond the progressives and the Democratic agenda will win. And whether that means she has to ignore the will of we the people on those issues where the people perhaps have voted for one thing, or whether it means she will go out and invent new rights, which we know the judicial activists on the left love to do. Either way, I think we can agree she will be a steady, unanimous vote for the left-wing agenda at every single turn.
Oh, look, she's an accomplished black woman, which was the criteria for Joe Biden.
Well, certainly she meets that criteria. But if you look at her judicial philosophy, she doesn't have a judicial philosophy. And when you don't have a judicial philosophy, it means you're really voting in a case because you like a particular outcome and not because of what the law dictates that you should do. So I think what we're going to see here is a typical liberal judicial activist that's going to vote the party line, as we've seen again and again. And, Maria, in contrast, conservatives often disagree. You will sometimes see, Justice Clarence Thomas disagreeing with Neil Gorsuch on an issue, and that's because they're all trying to follow the law as given to them. But that's not the case with most liberal judicial activists, and I think Judge Brown Jackson will be really in that ilk.
Yeah, Morgan Ortagus is with me this morning. And, Morgan, the last couple of confirmation hearings were quite the circus in terms of the really partisanship on display. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the Republicans on Senate Judiciary really need to hammer in just what our guest was talking about, which is her record on being soft on crime, but specifically soft on criminals. We were just talking earlier, Maria, on your show about the record of Democratic-run cities, the crime record in this country, homicides through the roof. And I think that Republicans really need to paint a picture here of what President Biden's policies really are on crime. And it's evident by the people, but not just this judge, but by the other judges that he's appointing as well. It's evident, no matter what they say on the defund the police rhetoric, that it's clear that they are appointing people with records of being soft on criminals, soft on crime. And even though there's a war going on in Ukraine right now, Republicans need to be focused on getting this message out, because I think it's concerning to many, many Americans.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, this is the ideology of the Democrat Party. I mean, soft on crime is one of the tenets, but it's also the climate change agenda that is the priority, no matter what.
That's right. I think Judge Brown Jackson is going to be a guaranteed vote to get rid of the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. It's a guaranteed vote to uphold any environmental regulations against business interests. It's a guaranteed vote in support of illegal immigration versus American citizens. I think these are all guaranteed votes in any case that comes before her, and I think her record speaks to that. And I think the Republicans in the Senate would be wise to make these observations. Now, it also makes sense to mention, of course, Maria, that that this is not like a dramatic structural change in the Supreme Court the way that Donald Trump was able to do it with, appointing and confirming 3 justices on the court. Judge Brown Jackson, while replacing Stephen Breyer, will not change really the outcomes of the court. But it is worth noting this is not at least a tremendous change in the history of the court as of this particular appointment, no matter what happens. And I think that probably will cause the Republicans maybe to go a little bit softer on her, because it's not going to change the outcome of the court as it's currently composed.
Well, I think that's a very good point. Let me just say that we are waiting for more information about Justice Clarence Thomas right now. He was hospitalized yesterday with an infection. We don't have any more information just yet, but of course we'll bring it to our audience when we get it. Mark, great to get your insights on all of that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Maria.